Okay, so we are starting with another round. This is May-June 2024, paper 1, variant 2. And right, we are not going to look at the questions. First thing we're going to do, because the first thing we are doing is the comprehension. So we're going to go ahead and read the text. Let me see how much of it there is on this page. Okay, and then there's quite a bit. So we don't need the introduction. Right? I'll leave it there. And I'll just read out the introduction, in fact. In this extract from a story set a long time ago in Italy, the writer has just started as a kitchen worker in a grand palace. One of his duties is to transport heavy blocks of ice from the ice house in the palace gardens to the kitchen. Okay, now here we go, paragraph 1 to 5 on screen. Take a read. Let me know when you're done, so I'll scroll to the next part. So here's the next. So moving on to kind of fit all of this on screen. Just all right, there's the last bit. I had to zoom out a bit. So go ahead. Right, so now that we're done reading this, let's take a look at what we have to deal with. So just go through all the questions there are. I'm not reading these out for you. Zooming out a bit. Just read these questions. We're not discussing them, just going through them. And right, just the sub questions of question 1 for the time being. Okay, now hopefully all of you followed along with that. And perhaps, right, looking at the questions, maybe certain points popped up. Oh, I read that. That could be the answer to this question. And that was the point, right? That was the aim, that your mind become more familiar with what we want to do. I'm not moving to question 2 because I don't want to cause confusion as to the type of question we're going to attempt. So let's start with question 1, 1A, sorry. In paragraph 1, what did the writer enjoy the most about moving the ice blocks for the first time he did this? Just a 1-mark question. It's pretty simple. All right. Explicit meaning, just find and write down.
Line number one.
Uh, Line number 1, what part? Seeing how they slid away.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Anyone else? I'll zoom in for this since we don't have to keep the whole text in view. All right. Afin says shooting them at the kitchen wall and watching them shatter. Okay. What about the two of you, Amariza and Bakar?
Same answer.
Same as which?
Shooting them at kitchen wall from a distance.
Okay. Right. So let's take a look at the question again. Abdul Hadi, right? The question is, what did the writer enjoy the most? Right? And then we look at the text. We see the first time I did this, the curiosity of play with the frozen slabs, right? Seeing how they slid away from me like eels, how I could ride them down the slope. Or best of all, right? So enjoy the most corresponds to the part which says best of all, right? This is what they're enjoying. Sure, right? Seeing how they slid away, riding them, okay. But best of all, shoot them at the kitchen wall, right? Watching them shatter. Now you only need one part of these, right? You could take the whole thing, obviously, there's nothing wrong. You can probably fit it into the two lines they've given. And so that's the answer you're looking for, okay? Not the sliding away like eels part. Because the reason being, it's not that they didn't enjoy it, it's because it's not the best of all. So it's not the part that they enjoyed the most. Right, so you get your 1 mark. Next, using your own words, and they've given you a phrase using your own words. Explain what the text means by I neglected my other duties. Now, the first thing you want to do, you see it, you've got 2 marks over here. Identify the two key words in this phrase. Right? What would be the two key words in this phrase? Mariza?
Neglecting and duties.
Yes. So you look at the more fancy words, I would say, comparatively, right? Now, this is obviously a very simple phrase, nothing fancy about it at all. But yeah, so in that, right, neglected and duties. Now, again, the simplest thing you can do to confirm that you're getting marks, you write down neglected over here, put a colon, and just, give either a one-word synonym that is that fits the context, or a phrase to explain that. And similarly for duties. So come up with what you would write down for neglected and what you would write down for duties, right? Maybe a minute or two for that, and then we'll move on to the next question. So just quickly come up with something, and let me know what you have. By the way, this is line 4, right? So here's the text for context. Remember that whatever you are thinking of should you know fit into the meaning that neglected and duties are giving here. Okay, so for uh, neglected, Amartya, you said avoiding, and avoiding is not the same as neglecting, right? Neglecting is not doing something, right? Whereas avoiding is not wanting to do something. So there is a technical difference over there. Not doing it and not wanting to do it. You could say that the end is the same. You're still not doing it. but the contextual, the reference or the context of the usage, right, would be different. There might be scenarios where they overlap, right, but not in this case. So, and then you said for duties, you said task, so that's correct. Then we have uh, for neglected, abandoned. Uh, that is right, Bakr. So that is not a suggested uh, response, but it might work. I'm saying might. Again, there might be a contextual issue over here between abandoning and neglecting. Right? Abandoning obviously means that you've left something and you're not doing it, whereas neglecting, right? The difference is abandon, perhaps I've left and I don't intend to do it at all. So I've abandoned that, task. I'm not going back to do it. Whereas neglecting means, right, you're supposed to do it, you're supposed to do it, but you're just, busy somewhere, you forgot, or you're busy, like I said, you're busy with other tasks, and so that's not on your priority list. It's not like you're saying I'm not going to do it. So it may or may not work, right? Because one of the suggested responses for neglecting is did not do or fail to complete. So again, there might be some contextual overlap between abandoned and neglected. It's a hit or miss. Again, that would be up to the examiner to decide. In this case, I would not credit it, right? Because I'm not the examiner, so I don't have that liberty. And then duties for task or, right? So duties or task or work, right? So task is it works, so that's correct. Uh, Afin, you suggested ignored, and that is one of the suggested responses. So ignored goes for neglected, and then you have responsibilities. Now, responsibilities is not suggested, but I think it fits in pretty well with duties. Uh, so it should work, right? And that should is like I would say 70% at least. I believe it should be credited because it fits in well. So what they've given for neglected is did not do, ignored, failed to complete, or forgot. Those are for neglected. And then for duties are his job, his task, or what he was supposed to do. So again, you don't need like any fancy words or a definite single word synonym. You can use a short phrase to sort of explain it out, and as long as the meaning is maintained, you've captured the essence of what they're saying, then it probably would be accepted. Again, I say probably because context and all of those matter, and it is up to the discretion of the examiner. Okay, moving on. Question C. In paragraph 3, how did the writer feel at first about being in the ice house? Give two details from the text to support your answer, right? So just to highlight over here, how did the writer feel at first? So this is a mix of implicit and explicit, I believe. Otherwise, let's see if they've given the feeling in the text itself. So that would make it completely an explicit meaning question. 1 mark for the feeling and 2 marks for details. The details from the text, so you just pick parts of the text and write them down. You can probably number them 1 or 2, right? So paragraph 3. So here we are. All right, what do we have? What is the feeling and what are the two details to support that feeling? I see you guys are still working on it. All right, so have you come up with anything? Mirza, the feeling cold. Now, you're probably taking that from the second part of the paragraph where it says after a few minutes and etc., all of this. But the question is asking you about, well, how did the writer feel at first? So he didn't immediately feel cold, right? As in uncomfortably cold. Right, Afin, your response, you're saying either proud or confident. Now, uh, interestingly, the mark scheme actually uh, gives guidance as to not accept very extreme emotions, such as victorious, proud, jubilant, or excited. Okay, and also not to accept something that has been picked from the text itself. So the feeling, as I mentioned, would be implicit. You have to figure it out, right? And because proud is, according to the mark scheme, a strong emotion, it's not something that strong, right? So look for something a bit more mellow.
Happy.
I'll give you guys a hint, right? It's a positive emotion.
Happy.
Can you give me something better than happy? Something that perhaps would fit in better with the context of how and why he felt what he did when he first went in. In fact, you know what? I'll go with happy. So okay, happy works. Comfortable, possibly. It's not a suggested response, but possibly. But uh, you're probably looking at it from the point that it was hot outside, and so right, he was comfortable in the cooler temperature. But this is kind of like linking it to the previous paragraph, and the question is, why was he there in the first place? Why was he ushered into the ice house? And right, it was as a disciplinary measure. Now, even if you don't look at that, even if you don't look at paragraph 2, you'd go, well, the answer is supposed to be from that same paragraph. And so, right, he stood there congratulating himself. Yeah, he stood there congratulating himself on avoiding the task of cleaning up. So he was, as Amarza suggested, he was happy, he was pleased with himself, uh, right? Comfortable, right, is something that perhaps might work. And since you're giving the supporting point as it was too hot outside, so yeah. Now, what would the details be? So if you're moving beyond the feeling now, if you're moving past the feeling, it's any sense that shows satisfaction or relief or enjoyment. Right? So you could say he felt relieved, he felt satisfied, he felt, happy, he was pleased, he liked being in there, right? He liked being in the ice chamber or ice room or whatever it's called. right? So that's the feeling. Now the details, one of them are right in the pleasant contrast to the stifling heat outside. So you can pick that part of the text that it was hot outside and it was cooler in the ice room, obviously. And what's another piece of text you can pick that supports him feeling pleased or happy or relieved or satisfied with himself? Anyone? Bakar? Abdul Hadi? You've been quiet the past two questions, Abdul Hadi. Bakar, you need to try. You need to try, okay? You need to sort of, if in this case, if you're unsure, right, you should not just leave it, like pick something. Okay, so you're having internet issues. All right. Right, so incidentally, the text is highlighted for you. I did not do that intentionally, but yes, right, he was feeling happy because he, uh, you know, thought he had avoided the task of cleaning up, right? So he had, did not need to do that anymore, or he escaped that part. Of course, right? That's not how it turned out. Okay, so that is question C. Question D. Explain what the writer was thinking when he leant against the door and it surprisingly swung open. Right? What was the writer thinking when it surprisingly swung open? Lines 13 to 14. What was the writer thinking? Come on, guys, one mark answer. It should be straightforward. Anything, Amariza? What was the writer feeling when the door surprisingly swung open?
He thought he would die.
A bit less dramatic. Something a bit less dramatic. What was his surprise about? What was his surprise about? It was not about Ahmed waiting outside. It was the door opening, right? Which surprisingly, the witch is, right? I leant against the door, which the door is the witch, right? So which surprisingly swung open. So he's surprised about the door swinging open. If he's surprised about it swinging open, what did he think would have happened? or what did he think would the situation be? Right? It's not what the writer was feeling, but what the writer was thinking. Explain what the writer was thinking when he leant against the door. What did he think would be the state the door was in? Would be in, sorry. Yes, Amariza.
He thought door would be locked.
Exactly. And that's the response that Afin has, and now, excuse me, Bakar as well. Right? And so he thought that the door would be locked because Ahmad shut it closed behind him. Right? But it surprisingly swung open. So the correct answer would be the door being locked or closed, or him being stuck inside, or the door not opening so easily or moving so easily, or something like that. All right, question E. From paragraph 5, identify two techniques used by the palace kitchens that the writer thought could be useful to improve the flavors of the ices he is making with Ahmed. Right? So, again, identify two techniques used by the palace kitchen cooks that the writer thought could be used to improve the flavor of the ices he is making with Ahmed. They've given you bullet points for the first and the second, so we don't mix them up. They're asking for two techniques, it's 2 marks, and that's all we're supposed to give. So moving to paragraph 5 over here, it's pretty simple. It's an explicit meaning question. Just find that part of the text, the relevant part, and note it down on your answer paper, right? Your answer script. So what 2 points are we looking for? Two techniques, sorry. All right, what do we have? So the first, as you guys are suggesting, are right the pureed fruits to intensify the flavors. So the cooks grew used to me. I watched them as they worked, observing how they pureed fruits to intensify the flavors. So that's one valid point. And the other, yes, you've got it. Extracting perfumes of flowers to flavor, right, to flavor creams and what, right, the liquors. So he thought those could be used. Of course, when he suggested them, etc., etc., he's not interested. So these are two techniques which I do believe he goes on to use later on. So we have our 2 marks. Good. F. Give two reasons why the secrets of ice had remained known to few. Right? So this known to few is given in line 22. That is only a hint for you. Right? So that is paragraph 6. Again, sorry. Give two reasons why the secrets of ice had remained known to few. Right, have you guys come up with something? Bakar, it was passed down within two families. Yes, so that would be correct. If anyone else, right, Amarza, you're rather quiet today. Abdul Hadi is having internet problems apparently. So yes, Afin and Bakar, the points you've given combined would be the 2 points. Right, so it was passed down within only two families, and the emphasis is on mentioning that there are two families, right? And the other is that they were contained within either the notebook or in Ahmed's head. Okay. Now, moving on. Okay, let's see if we can manage this. In paragraph 7, the writer asked Ahmed what the ices they made tasted like. So, the first part, what reason did the writer give Ahmed for wanting to know? And secondly, suggest the real reason the writer was asking about the taste of the ices. So, this is also explicit meaning, should be straightforward. And so, here we are in paragraph 7, right? If you could quickly find them, we could wrap this up for the day. So, right, what do you have at least for the first part, G part 1? Again, the question is, what reason did the writer give Ahmed? What reason did the writer, so the kid in the story, right? What reason did the writer give Ahmed for wanting to know? Bakar, what does the taste matter to you is not a reason, right? That is a response by Ahmed showing that he doesn't really care. So if you could attempt that again, perhaps you're able to, right, get a proper response. What reason did he give for wanting to taste the ices? Amarza, do you have anything?
No. Bakar, do you have a new response for the first part? Okay. So it mentions here clearly after Ahmed says, "Why does it matter to you?" And he says, "I think I'll understand better how to make the ices if I know how they're meant to be taste. How they're meant to taste." So yes, right? He claims that he would understand better how to make them if he knows how they taste. So that is the reason he gave, but suggest the real reason he was asking about them. Right? Suggest the real reason the writer was asking about the taste. So why was he really asking? Did he want to know how to make them better, or was there something he was hiding? Right now, the keyword suggest means give a calculated like response, right? Based on what you read or what you know. It is a suggestion, right? So what over here do you think he's actually talking about? Just read ahead, right? Why did he really want to know? Want to taste, sorry. Right, Bakar, you're the only other active member. Afin has given a response. right? We've got other silent participants for today. So what do you think? Why did he really want to have a taste? Okay. So as Afin suggested, right, he was curious about how they tasted, or right, there was the allure of the syrup, right, the orange flavored syrup, right? So he just wanted to taste. He was curious about it. He was tempted by the ice or the syrup, and he wanted to know how they are. Right? He's not really at this point, perhaps, right? He's not really interested in testing anything or inventing something new that happens later on at the end. So this is the first time he's getting a taste, and so he just wants to experience that. Okay, so we'll stop here. We do have one question left over from part one. We'll do that tomorrow, and then we'll cover the rest, right? Question number two, and might end up assigning what shall I call it? Yeah, I might end up assigning maybe the composition task as well, right? So there'll be a bit of work for you to do after tomorrow until next class, but we'll see, right, how that goes. And so I'll see you guys next time. All right, that's all for today.